Yeah, Phil.
That's under annual, not free.
Yes, annual. Free credit report will try to charge you everything they can. Annual credit report was required by the federal government as a website for the 3 bureaus to set up. And they will try to sell you your credit score and all this other stuff that you don't need. What you want to look at is the trade lines, and you'll get those for free. And they'll do everything they can to sell you other things, but unless you just want those, you don't have to buy them to actually see your credit report without a score. Yes, sir.
Do identity theft protection services such as LifeLock sometimes interfere with your background?
Yeah, well, what happens, and we see it pretty frequently. If you've got your credit report frozen, in Texas you can get it frozen for free. You don't even have to pay for it if you've been a victim of identity theft of any kind. But if you freeze your credit report, what happens is you've got to go back. The employer will call you and say, "Hey, your credit report's frozen. We need you to unfreeze it." And you can unfreeze it for just a day, and tell them, "Okay, I need you to pull it today or pull it tomorrow," and then it'll be frozen again. And so they don't hurt you in that process because so many people, we see it a lot. So many people have been victims of identity theft, and to be honest, there's not much you can do to really prevent it. It's going to happen to you. No, I mean, and a lot of times they won't see the LifeLock stuff unless your account's frozen. That's going to be, where an employer would really see it if they couldn't access their report. Are there any other questions I can answer for y'all? Yes, ma'am.
My question is on dates of employment. Sometimes kind of fuzzy is last month, and sometimes it's put on the dates.
Right.
All that. What do you do to
Pick up the phone and call that employer and do the work. Yeah, I mean, think about look at it from the employer's point of view. The question was, what about dates of employment if I don't have exact dates? And should I just, do my best guesstimate? My advice is no. Pick up the phone and call that employer. That does a couple things. First of all, you can give them a phone number about exactly where to call in the company. Because if I'm having to look up Xerox and verify employment at Xerox, I don't know where to start calling. I call corporate, go to switchboard. They say they use this other service, the work number to verify. Okay, so we get routed over that way. But if you've gone through that process and you can give a phone number when you fill out the application, here's the actual phone number to verify that employment. And they'll give you your dates and all that, so you're exact. That just makes you look that much better and prevents any delays if something's off. Because I see people make, and they may be meaningful or unintentional mistakes in being a whole year off. But the employer's got to evaluate, was this person honest with me? Well, we've got this integrity policy. We tell them everything on the employment application has to be completed and accurate. They've attested that it's complete and accurate. Now I've got a year discrepancy here. I would go ahead and get that information up front, do the work, make sure a lot of people somehow 15, 20 years after you graduate from college, people forget what their degree was. And they'll say computer information systems, but it really wasn't called that back then. It was called something else. And so figure out exactly what it is and make sure it's accurate when you put it on the application or on your resume, either one. Yes, ma'am.
On that note, I was going to tell you I applied for a job that wanted to know your history, seemed like my whole employment history, and I had to go back and I found out that what I thought was the title of my job position and what they put on my business card was actually reported differently in HR.
Right.
You want to say staff problem was
Yeah, you've got payroll systems. Yeah, your title can be different. Your functional title, what you actually did, and what people called you may be different than what is in that employer's HRIS system and their information system. So, and you can understand why. They may put you in a job category for, supervisor, and you may be supervising 20 people, and they call you a manager, as a functional title, and maybe it's on your business card, but what's in their computer system and what they're going to verify from when you call payroll to verify that may be different. So it's a good thing to know. And also, again, make sure you've got a good phone number. Yes, sir.
How do you verify against a defunct company?
You don't. That's one of the real challenges, because if the employer's out of business, they're out of business. And schools that go out of business, which isn't common, but they do, they usually put their records in a trusteeship, and they've got some service that verifies them for a fee. But employers, once they're defunct, it can be hard. What we try to do for clients, if somebody lists an employer and say they're out of business, we try to go verify that that company existed and that they went out of business. Usually we can find media articles or something saying they went out of business about this time. And then the employer will often come back and say, can you find a former supervisor, find somebody who can verify that information that way? But if it's been 15 years, good luck. You may not be able to. And employers understand that because most of us at some point will, I know people who've bankrupted 2 or 3 companies over the years, and so you can't verify it. Yes, sir.
For positions over $75,000, if it's not 7 years, is it how hard they go back?
Well, they can. Everything is. There's no limit on what can be reported, but most employers will still generally only receive 7 years of information because, quite honestly, background screening companies often don't want to report that. Anytime you're reporting records, the idea is that you're losing money in the industry because it takes time, and you're opening yourself up to being sued. I mean, we're kind of different because I came out of HR and in healthcare and in aerospace, and I'm all about finding everything we can legally tell this employer and let them make the best decision they can. But in general, this is a commoditized business, and it's about fast and inexpensive, fast and inexpensive. So they don't want to report. So many of them will only report 7 or 10 years, even convictions. They may ignore a 20-year-old conviction even if they see it. And so, but technically, if you're making over $75,000, there are no limits in most states about what can be reported. We will report, if somebody's going to make $100,000 a year, we would report a dismissed criminal case that was 20 years old. That doesn't mean my clients would use it, but our role is to give them everything we can legally give them.
What's the typical cost of the background?
To do it right, and to do it the way that we deal with clients, it runs about $125 to $145 on the criminal piece, and then depending on what else they ask. But there are a lot of companies that are selling $25, $30 background checks out there, and they're just getting a really narrow thing. We won't even sell that because we deal with clients who have to get it right and can't afford to put the wrong person in the wrong position.
What is eligibility for rehire mean to the business unit?
It means that if they had the same position open or something that you were qualified for, would they have you back in the organization? And so when you hear they're not eligible for rehire, our first question is that based on your company policy? Because some companies have policies that say, especially small businesses, we will not rehire somebody who's ever left. Once you leave, we're done with you. But a lot of other employers, when they give us a not eligible for rehire, there's a reason for it, and they want us to read between the lines, and that always makes me nervous. And so we'll give it to our client and encourage our client to call them directly, because sometimes, to be honest, an employer talking to another employer will get better information than a third party calling in who's not directly in the hiring decision. So, those two employers can talk back and forth about, well, here's what we're considering this person for, and here's what their role is. How would they fit in this environment? And that's not something me or my staff would really be familiar enough with to translate between those employees.
I have a quick question. What is permissible for a former supervisor to say?
Anything that's honest and true. They can tell, there's this idea out there, because the employment law attorneys know that they have a lot of boneheaded clients, okay? And if you've been in corporate America, you've worked with supervisors who are idiots, okay, at some point. And they will say, they're mad that Joe left, and he only gave me 2 weeks notice, and so now his new employer is calling for this background check. Well, I'm going to throw him under the bus. And you've got people who do that. And so that's the problem. And so employment law attorneys say, don't say anything. Name, rank, and serial number, right? Title, dates of employment. With a signed release, we'll verify their wage, and that's it. But the truth is, they can, as long as it's defensible, there's no law that says they can't do that. They're worried about libel, slander, defamation of character is the reason they don't give that information. But as long as it's defensible and they've got documentation to support it, they can. And probably on 30% of the employment verifications we get, we either get a true reason for termination or at least eligibility for rehire. But at the very least, even if you're just verifying the information on the employment application, employers should still do it because it's an integrity test that this person tells us the truth.
Mike?
Yes? Firms will do that, and we've done it on occasion. To be honest, single-time searches, there's a couple issues with it. First of all, we're really thorough, so we're not, most of the time, if you're not expecting something on your background check, you're honestly not expecting it, it probably is because it doesn't belong there and it's an error. And it would get through our process, it would never get to you because the errors, we would catch the errors ourselves before we cleaned it up. You can go to the online background screening companies. A lot of those guys will sell you that kind of stuff. And since that's what many employers use, that may give you a better barometer of the of any inaccuracies that may end up being reported on you out there. So we've got 30 days to reinvestigate. And like I say, any good screening company is going to knock that out fast and fix it.